YouTube, it's me, Bergie, and as promised, I am here with the top 5 books that I read in 2018. So let's just get into it because I plan on not only giving you descriptions and my feelings on the top 5, but I also have a couple of honorable mentions that I would like to get to, so it might be a long video, so let's just jump right into it. At the number 5 spot on this list is Obsidian by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is the third and final book in their Scythe Files, and it's a science fiction series where mixed formatting is used to follow the after effects of a corporation's destruction of an entire planet. In this specific book, we are once again following the characters from the first 2 books, but there is also new characters introduced who are kind of the main focus of the story. But during this book, we do see them all kind of come together. I thought it was just amazing how the authors kept up the intensity and danger of what was going on consistently throughout the series, and it continued on even more so. I felt like it was more dangerous in this third book. So it's just completely astonishing how they were able to keep that up and increase it as they were going along. I know a lot of people in the booktube world kind of thought that the books were repetitive plot-wise and their characters were kind of just copies of each other, but I personally found that it was different enough that I just enjoyed it. Another thing people think is that it's tied up too nicely, but with all the emotional roller coastering this series gave me, I was fine with it ending on a high note because it could have ended really, really sadly. So I'm glad it didn't. But anyway, I just really enjoyed this book, and that's why it is on this list. The 4th book on this list is the entire Thymus Files trilogy by Sylvain Neuvel. I breezed through the series so quickly. I basically binged them, even though I think I had to wait a couple of weeks for the 3rd book to come out. But anyway, I didn't have to wait too long, so it was basically binging the series. I had heard about the series from BookTube because it was constantly talked about, but somehow I didn't really know what the plot was. So I decided to pick it up blind. So this is a science fiction series that starts off when a young girl happens to fall into a ditch where a huge metallic hand is at the bottom and kind of saves her from falling deeper down. And then it follows as later that same girl, who is now a woman, tries to learn about this metal robotic hand, like what it is exactly and where it came from, but it's totally more than that. Book 1, which is Sleeping Giants, is an adventure thriller kind of sci-fi. The second, Waking Gods, is more of a classic sci-fi. I don't want to give spoilers as to why that is, but if you've read it, you can kind of figure out why. And then the 3rd book, which is called Only Human, is almost dystopian because it goes into a lot of philosophical questioning about the world and what has happened in the first 2 books. Now, despite the different focuses and the different feelings each book kind of gave me, I found that the books flowed together really well, almost perfectly, but like in the perfect where there are a little bit of flaws, but overall it just wows you. My only issues, though, which are very, very minor, and it didn't happen that often, was that sometimes the pacing was a little off. I guess where it should have been a little bit faster was kind of going quite slow, and then vice versa. And then also I thought the ending was not what I expected, but I honestly can't pinpoint what exactly I wanted the ending of the series to be, so that's just a personal problem. I thought, though, overall it was really good, and it was so good that I was able to binge the whole series without getting bored of it. The number 3 spot on this list goes to Scythe and Thunderhead, which are 2 of the 3 books of Neil Shusterman's Arc of the Scythe series. They're the only 2 books that have been published. This is another series that I picked up because of the hype on BookTube. I heard it as being a utopian world where the only way people died was if a scythe killed them, and I wanted to see how that turned out, because that is kind of interesting. And I've also read another series by Neil Shusterman, so I already knew I really enjoyed his writing style, so I was like, hey, this will probably be a good book, and obviously I was right in thinking that. While this book is about a society where people don't die unless by scythes, it is by no means a utopian, and the people who said that are completely off, because utopians are where the people willingly go along with the kind of rigid societal rules. And in this book, it's definitely the reason why people follow it and go along with it is because they're afraid. And that is definitely makes it a dystopian. But that aside, I thought this was written very well. Again, I kind of figured that because I have read another book series by Neil Shusterman. I thought the dystopian elements were very unique in that the characters are fully formed characters, and really the plot is very unpredictable. I was getting whiplash with everything that was going on because I was not expecting it. And again, I know I mentioned this in my reads, the entire list of reads that I read in 2018, but oh my god, the cliffhanger to Thunderhead, I need that third book now, because I need to know what happens to two of the characters. I need that book. And you can really obviously expect that I will pick up that book the second it comes out. The second book on this list, so my second favorite book I read during 2018, was The Trials of Apollo, The Burning Maze by Rick Riordan. So of course there had to be a Rick Riordan book on this list. And honestly, I'm surprised that both of the new Rick Riordan books that I had read this year are not on this list. Spoiler. And two, that one of them wasn't in the top spot. Because really, every Rick Riordan book I read has kind of been my favorite book of all time. So the fact that only one of them is on this list and not in that top spot is amazing. But anyway, I digress. This is the third book in his third Greek myth-based series, where Apollo becomes a mortal teenager who needs to perform a series of Herculean trials in order to become a god again. And basically the trials are to do whatever this new demigod Meg tells him to do, but it does go deeper than that. I really don't want to go into more detail because this is the third book in the third series, and it would be extremely spoilery if you have not read anything by Rick Riordan before and want to, which I do urge you to do. He is my favorite author of all time, I think I can confidently say. I will say though that something happened in this book that completely shocked me, because I had no idea Rick Riordan was willing to do this to... I'm not gonna say, because if I say, then it'll be spoilery, but yeah, I was not expecting him to do this. And it honestly blew my mind and made me very emotional about something that I didn't think I cared at all about. It's really hard to say this without spoiling, because I don't feel like I'm conveying it across. I do plan on making a whole spoilery review on most of the Rick Riordan books I've read. So I'll go into that there, because I need to get that part off my chest, and nobody really has been reading the Trials of Apollo series, not like how they were reading the Heroes of Olympus series, so I can't like fangirl and like spoilery discuss this book with anyone. So yeah, I'll do that in a later video at some point. But despite the fact that I was shocked, I really shouldn't have been shocked, because Rick Riordan is just, again, a genius at writing, and he is able to do things that catches you off guard, or at least me. And really, it's amazing how he interweaves not only the different books that he's written together, but also the different myths from different cultures together. He finds a way of writing fun, realistic characters and great stories, and I have all the praise for Rick Riordan, because he's just an amazing writer. And really, I couldn't recommend a writer higher than Rick Riordan, so that says a lot. So let's go into the honorable mentions. First up, one that I did not write down for some reason, are the two books in Robin Hobb's Farseer trilogy. I read the first two books this year. Even though they are quite slow-paced, I really did enjoy the build up that she had created, because it starts off when the main character Fitz is very young, so we kind of are perceiving the world as he does. So when he's a young kid, we obviously don't perceive as much of what's going on behind the scenes, so it's kind of slower at that point. But once he's older, it goes it really starts to get going, and it's just amazing. So I wanted to give some praise to that. Another book I wanted to honorably mention was Darius the Great Is Not Okay by Adib Khorram. This is a contemporary novel following Darius, an Iranian American, as he not only battles with mental health and familial issues, but also his own culture, as he is visiting his homeland of Iran for the first time. And this is such a great book because it succeeds at tackling those issues, but also because it includes such a real and heartwarming friendship that I don't really feel like any other book that I've read so far, especially contemporaries, has captured as well as Adib Khorram did. And more personally, it was relatable in its depiction of mental health and in the weariness or shame, although those they're not the right words that I'm looking for, but I think that's the closest I can kind of describe. When you're kind of like a foreign American who doesn't really know life in your homeland. For example, I'm Greek American, second generation, born in the US, so I feel quite detached from my culture than if I was actually born in Greece, despite the fact that my family does celebrate a lot of Greek holidays and celebrates a lot of in a traditional Greek way, so I do get it sometimes through that, but I also don't speak Greek, sadly. So I feel like I'm missing out on my heritage, and that's something that's definitely brought up in this novel, and I thought it was just a great, relatable thing, because I feel like a lot of people, especially in the US, have that kind of feeling, because we are mostly a melting pot of different people from different countries, and having that kind of duality of belonging to two different worlds, I guess. I really enjoyed how it was depicted in the book. Another honorable mention is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This book, but more so Sanderson himself, has been hyped on BookTube so much, so I was kind of nervous to read a book by him, but I'm also glad that I finally did, because I really just enjoyed this book. And this fantasy novel, which was discussed as being a standalone, but is totally not. There is a second book coming out in 2020 that I did not know about until I finished the book and realized that, oh, this ended at a not a good closed off way, so obviously there has to be something going on, and I have to wait until 2020 to read it. But anyway, so again, this is a fantasy where people can suddenly get an illness that kind of makes them a zombie, but not 100% zombie, like not the traditional zombie, but kind of zombie-ish. We, as well as the characters, don't really know who or why or how people get infected with it. It's just known that this is practically a death sentence, because those who are infected are exiled into a decrepit city that might potentially be connected to the illness, but they don't know. So I found this to be very well crafted, both plot-wise and character-wise, and it was just a great balance between being a serious fantasy and humorous. So I really enjoyed it. Another honorable mention is The Secret Adversary by Agatha Christie. This is the second book by Christie that I've read, and the first in her Tommy and Twopence series. And after reading this, I can predict soundly that I will enjoy all of Christie's mystery novels, and I'm excited to pick up more, both in this Tommy and Twopence series and in her Hercule Poirot series. The final honorable mention that I wanted to include here was A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. This has been getting a lot of buzz both on and off of BookTube, so I was excited but also anxious to read it. While it was slow, especially plot-wise, I was so engaged by the characters that I needed to know what would happen to them, and therefore just like kept on reading the next chapter and going on to get back to that first character's perspective. But by that point I got intrigued by the second character's perspective, so I basically, once I picked it up, I did not want to put it down. Before I start book 2, which I definitely plan on doing, I want to watch the first season of the TV show so I can get kind of refreshed on what's going on, and honestly I can't wait for either. So, with those honorable mentions out of the way, I'm going to tell you what my favorite book that I read in 2018 was, and I am really surprised that this is it. Again, as I said before, I kind of expected a Rick Riordan book to be in this spot, but it was not. Instead, it goes to Secret Machines Chasing Shadows by Tom DeLonge and AJ Hartley. Again, you will find no one more surprised than me that this is my #1 read of 2018. I initially bought this book and was interested in reading it because of Tom DeLonge, who I grew up with as being part of the band Blink-182, and that's one of my favorite bands of all time. I have a tattoo that's partially inspired by one of their songs, so I love Blink-182. So obviously I was intrigued by anything he did. However, I was also anxious because he's not a writer, and I don't know if he wrote some of the songs for their band, but anyway, he's not a novel writer, and because he's kind of obsessed with aliens, and I didn't want it to be like just an obsessive alien story. So both of these anxieties kind of made me not pick it up. I was kind of like pushing it to the side, but finally I picked it up and I fell in love with it. Literally, within the first 5 chapters, I just loved it so much. It honestly has the same gripping, suspenseful feel as Dan Brown's Robert Langdon series, which is one of my favorite series of all time. So saying that obviously shows how much I really enjoyed this book, which is astounding because I haven't really found another adult series that had that same feel. But at the same time, it manages to be its own thing. So anyway, this book follows a variety of perspectives as the characters slowly start to witness paranormal things happening. But don't worry, it doesn't start out paranormal right away. In fact, it seems like a very realistic suspense novel for the majority of the novel, as only small hints of sci-fi elements are ever introduced. But it's so magnificently well crafted. And saying that, I don't know how much DeLonge actually contributed, or if it was just like mostly AJ Hartley writing it, but either way, I applaud them both for creating a wonderfully gripping story, and I really can't wait to read the next book in the series. So I totally recommend you read this. If you are a fan of more realistic science fiction novels, read it. If you love Dan Brown's Robert Langdon series because of its gripping nature, read it. If you liked it because of the conspiracy kind of theories that are threaded throughout those books as well, read this book. You will love it. If you love Blink-182 / Tom DeLonge, read this book. But yeah, so that was my #1 book that I had read in 2018, along with my honorable mentions and my other top 5 books that I read in 2018. What were your guys' favorite books that you read in 2018? Have you read any of these books? And if you have, let me know. I would love to discuss them with you guys, because I loved them, obviously. And I could really just talk forever about these books, especially Secret Machines, which has not popped up at all on BookTube, so I would like it if it finally or suddenly became popular on BookTube, because I loved it and I think a lot of people would enjoy it. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time when I discuss the books I did not like that I read in 2018. So yeah, I'll see you guys later. Bye!